of all, I want to introduce TechUp. It's a local organization that meets once a month and has guest speakers come in. A lot of networking and discussions go on there. I'd say about 30 to 40 very active members. And an open invitation if you'd like to come in and sit through some of the presentations and potentially join. TechUp is great for mentoring. There are people there that look forward to mentoring the younger people and networking. They're looking for interns, and some of them are hiring as we speak. So could the TechUp members raise your hands if you want to get an idea? There's the people in the room that could be your friend and advisor going forward. I titled this Resilient Careers, and the reason is this summer I had a chance to attend some presentations, some seminars on the kind of the state of the art of supply chain going forward. One of the things that was discussed was the fact that you can now retrofit a diesel truck for $30,000 and make it self-driving. At that price, it's going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but in the next 5 years, you will see self-driving trucks on the streets. And the other thing is that I went to an artificial intelligence seminar, and for 3 days, the discussion was what's going to happen to the future with artificial intelligence and robotics, these kind of things. And one of the things that we finally came to a conclusion is that not even the people in the middle of that technology can predict what's going to happen. But we do know it's going to happen, and it's going to affect everybody, every discipline, every industry. It is just a fact of life, and we're all going to have to deal with it. So at the end of those 3 days, and there was professors from Stanford and MIT and etc., we asked the question, if there was a 12-year-old kid in front of you asking, what kind of discipline should I get into? What should be my career? We came to the conclusion, we don't know. That everything's going to get affected. But what we do know is there's certain attributes that people have that are going to make them employable no matter what happens. And just an observation, over the years I've done a lot of reference calls. Headhunters call me up and want to talk about an individual that's applying for a job. And the questions they ask have nothing to do with their education, their skills, etc. The questions are, tell me about the person. I like to understand, do they get along well with others? Can they communicate? How do they behave under stress? These kind of things. And that's kind of pull all this together, and that's the basis of my presentation. Is I want to talk about the skills that are it's going to be very helpful to you going forward, and it may make the difference between a promotion and potentially getting fired. And we'll talk about that. By the way, here's my email address. Anybody who has a question, I always respond to emails. So my background's been with big companies, pretty much my entire career. I'm going to talk about that, a little bit of the future, a bit about me, and the list. The list is things to do and not to do. So let's talk about big companies for a moment. If I look at this whole big company thing, you basically have two choices. You can do an end run around dealing with a big company, form your own company, get your own funding, go out there and get the enterprises, or you can go to work for one of these companies. You can get money from them. All these big companies have VC sides. They do funding startups on a regular basis. You may want to sell to a big company. You may want to be an entrepreneur in a big company. We'll talk about that. And if you're working for a big company, being pulled through the glass ceiling, and just an observation, people don't push their way through glass ceilings. They're pulled through glass ceilings by people in the organization that looks at, for instance, I did, every year I had to go through succession planning in my position. And the person that I wanted to succeed me in case I won the lottery or something wasn't necessarily the one with the most experience or the one that's been there the longest. It was the one with the total package. Total package, personal skills, behaviors, and work ethics, and the perception of that individual by the people around them. And that's what we'll be talking about. So think about this. If in the company that I started, I was funded by two very large companies, Western Digital and Teradata. And they provided me a development environment, an incubator site, and cash, and set me on my own and said, go have fun, let's see where it takes us. So, back to the 12-year-old. Here's the things that are happening. The world's being Uberized as we speak, right? The whole supply chain and the business processes are being affected by your ability to reach out and grab somebody to do something for you. And it's only going to get bigger. Autonomous things and processes. The truck and the processes. I'm working on artificial intelligence solutions right now for a very large company, looking at how to do the work of hundreds of people using computers. The Internet of Things is just going to get bigger. The whole idea of instrumenting everything out there, and it keeps expanding. And what do you do with all that data? And how do you utilize it and exploit it? The instant access to information. Anybody here can go to your computer and find answers just about anything. And instant career implosions. You do something silly on the internet and you will be punished. So, a bit about my career. I got out of the Navy, went to work for Litton Guidance on the first inertial navigation systems using solid state accelerometers. That became the basis of your cell phone technology, the ability for the phone to know where it is and how fast it's moving and where it's going, those kind of things. Went to work for a private failure analysis lab and then recruited by Western Digital as a failure analyst. I focused on integrated circuits, and the equipment that I used was scanning electron microscopes, electron microprobes, Fourier transform infrared analysis. Don't those things sound cool? I mean, you just roll. It was very scientific, and what was interesting about this is for me to be successful in analyzing these things, I had to understand how they were built. So anything I analyzed, whether it was a monolithic capacitor or an integrated circuit or a pacemaker or whatever, I had to understand how it was built and the processes around it for me to be effective. With that, at Western Digital, I was promoted to VP of Quality and Operations and built a data warehouse for the disk drive division. And what was interesting thing here is I put a star there because at Western Digital we built a brand new wafer fab based upon Bell Labs technology. We licensed the technology from Bell Labs and we bought capacity from AT&T, and they were one and the same company at the time. And for those that read history, Bell Labs invented the transistor. So we had a submicron multi-level metal process that we put in our own fab, and then I would go to Allentown, Pennsylvania, then to Orlando, Florida, and to Madrid to visit with the fabrication sites there. And I met a woman there. She was just something. I mean, there's certain people that come along and you just go, wow, this person has the right ingredients. And she was the contract administrator for Western Digital. And we did all of our business transactions and quality transactions, et cetera, through her. We both went our separate ways. I lost track of her. I went to different companies. She took off and did something else. And I ran into her at Lynn's over here a few years ago. And that's Ellen Trainer, who's the marketing director for SUU. So, a bit of trivia, but coincidental, I don't know. I founded a software company that did analytics for supply chain operations. funded by Western Digital and Teradata. Sold a very large footprint to Ford Motor Company. All the aftermarket parts are managed through a system that we developed for knowing where every aftermarket part was through their network. With about 2,000 suppliers and 38 distribution centers were integrated. Teradata acquired us from Western Digital, bought out the remaining shares. Went there, VP of Industry Consulting. I covered high-tech, oil and gas, industrial accounts, and consumer goods. And then I retired 3 times, finally got it right, and then decided to go back into the market working with artificial intelligence part-time. Just because I'm trying to understand what it is, it's very complex. The stars. I went from science to operations to building our own company, going down Sand Hill Road looking for money, trying to figure out how to sell stuff, price it, hiring people, etc. Went into Teradata, figured out what selling was all about big time. So I was on the pre-sale side. And these stars kind of indicate, kind of reminders for me that during this path, my career went up and down and all around, and things happened, right? The dot-com bust, the aerospace bust, 9/11, the recession in 2008, the technology churn that occurred. When I came out of, I was working on the first graphics controller chips for laptop computers. And now look at it, right? Every one of you are going to have a similar chart when you retire. Right? And unfortunately, your chart's going to have those kind of things as well. Wars, recessions, big things, little things. And the career that you start off with today may not be the career you end up with tomorrow. In fact, it's almost guaranteed with the way technology is changing. Okay. Here's the customers I called on. Monday morning, I get on a plane. I did 175,000 miles a year, domestic flights, and Delta, flying out of Cedar City. As long as I could get to Salt Lake, I could get anywhere. The kind of things we did was, for instance, in-flight diagnostics of jet engines, qualifications of jet engines, let's see, customer retention analysis, manufacturing analysis, digital content for the internet. Some of these companies, like for instance, UTC Aerospace, that was working on integrating 2 companies that were acquired, Ball Aerospace and Parker Hannifin. We did similar things, and the company wanted to merge both of them into a common data system. And that was pretty straightforward. It only took 2 years. And of course, Western Digital and Hershey's, etc. After the presentation, if you want to talk about any one of these, I'd be happy to do it. I've been in every one of them. American Red Cross, all of the blood data sits in a database. They know everything there is to know about your blood going forward, and it's extremely important for that not to be screwed up. Okay, so let's get into my advice to you. First, build a solid foundation. If you don't have a solid foundation, you're not going to be able to get anywhere. Be confident and comfortable in your chosen profession. Even if you migrate out of that profession, you should be very, very well versed in the discipline that you selected. Be curious. Familiarize yourself with all the core skills that we're going to talk about. Appreciate expertise around you. I found that in my career, the key is hiring people much smarter than me. Right? Surround myself with people that were absolutely brilliant. Keep up with technology, obviously. Be true to yourself, your family, your faith, your country. If you're not, you're going to have trouble keeping your foundation underneath you. Very important in big companies, learn to work in a team and matrix environment. So, matrix. In big companies, you may be involved with multiple projects simultaneously, and each project has a manager, and it has you have a boss, right? They have project objectives, they have schedules to meet, and you could end up with working for 4 or 5 different bosses simultaneously. It's the nature of big companies. Be aware of how others perceive you. I advise all of you to go to Google and see if your name shows up and what people are saying about you and those kind of things. Be totally committed to your company. If you're just there for the paycheck, it's going to be obvious. Right? Stay healthy. You can't play at this level if you're not. And be fearless. Never turn down a promotion. Never say, I don't know how to do something. We'll figure it out. Okay. Know your numbers. This is probably the most important one I'm going to show. And the numbers isn't just dollars. Okay? So accounting principles, your general ledger, the 10Qs, the annual reports, those things are extremely important for you to understand how they work. But also there's numbers related to operations, throughput, cycle time, yield, quality, other parameters like that that are indicative of how a company is performing. Your own personal numbers. How many people here know your credit score? Very good. When you sign that employment agreement, they're going to do a credit check on you. I guarantee it. The macro, micro economic effects, macro being the big economic things like depressions and recessions and those kind of things, but the micro ones is, how about something that's going to affect the industry you're in or the particular company you're in? There's always mergers and acquisitions going on. There's also technology churn that happens very often. Identify key metrics, and what I mean by that is there's no way you can keep your head around all the different metrics that are possible to manage. So there's key metrics. And in Western Digital, it was days on hand inventory. It told us if it was going up, that the market was slowing down. If it went down, the market was heating up. And we looked at it every day by the part number, by the location, and we knew if we kept it in balance, things worked. Okay? So it was a key parameter that we could monitor and kept us in the game on a continuous basis. Conserve cash, run your business tight. You don't want to be spending money with just because it's there. If you're going to start your own company, you better understand dilution. It's a fact of life. Every round of funding, you're going to get diluted. Your investors may put in a clause in their contract that they can't be diluted, and you're going to have to convince them they have to. And be very careful with other people's money. Case in point, if you're going to form your own company and you're going to go out and raise money through families and friends, and you convince your parents to put a mortgage on their home, put money into your company, and all of a sudden something like 9/11 happens and the VC world just goes turtle. They shut down for a year, nothing happens, there's no IPOs, there's no more money, and then you have to tell your parents that they're going to be living in a double wide in their retirement. That's a risk for you and your founders to take, not your parents or your friends. I'm being blunt. Appreciate scale. If you start a company and you're doing well, and you want to go to the investors are going to look at you and say, what's the limitation to scale this company? You're at $1 million a year, how can we make it 20? What are the issues in front of you? You need to know what those issues are, you need to know what your mitigation plans are, and you need to know, in theory, how you're going to deal with it. If you don't, then the investors don't want to teach you that. They expect that you come to the table with that information and that knowledge. A spreadsheet is not a business plan. Okay? Just because it's in Excel does not mean you're going to double your business next year. Right? It's just a theoretical thing that you can manipulate the numbers on and see the net effect. The business plan is all-encompassing. I spent a summer reviewing submittals, business plan submittals to a VC firm. And it was one of these things where you pick it up, and you read it, and you go, got that one in the trash can. Okay, this one looks like an interesting one. I'll hand that off to the VCs. And there's a formula. There's a way of making these things that gets the attention. And you kind of have to work through that in order to be able to submit a business plan and get somebody to actually respond to it. Exploit scale for ROI, the return on investment. What was kind of interesting here is one of our customers at Teradata was a semiconductor company. We made 2 points of yield improvement using data, and it was worth $500 million a year in profit. When you're dealing with a big company, little things can have big effects. Be respectful of everyone. I worked for a CEO that when he interviewed somebody, the first thing he would do after they left is call down to the receptionist and to his admin and ask what you think of that person that came in. Very intuitive people. They know how to read people, and when somebody comes in, their guard's down, they don't think anybody's looking. I can tell you right now, if you don't treat everybody well, you are not going to get ahead in big business. It's just not acceptable anymore. Interacting with your device while engaged with a human, that's just not respectful. Real important, don't critique the person in public, critique the process. And don't criticize, offer constructive advice in person. And on occasion, be prepared to take the hard action and don't waver. And what I meant by that is, I had to lay off our CEO's nephew one time. And it was hard, but it was necessary. Everything's a process. So I took over here on the whiteboard and I drew out a process, and I call it the value chain, the product life cycle, and the business life cycle. And it starts with design and development, new product introduction, your manufacturing, your distribution, your finished goods, your omni-channel distribution, customer service returns, field service recalls, and end of life. And all sorts of technology layers underneath it. Every step in this process, there's an input and an output. There's a process within a process. There's people responsible for this. And if you start with a big company, you could be right there. You could be right here. And as you move up in the organization, your sphere of responsibility could be all of design or all of manufacturing, etc. Whether you're a software company, you're an insurance company, whatever the case may be, there's a similar life cycle that takes place. Knowing where you are in the process, knowing what is coming at you and what your expectations of your customers are, is an extremely important ability. For all of those customers you saw on the logo slide, I had to remember on a daily basis where we were and where we were in our process of selling and delivering technology. So, very important to know what the next step is in everything you're doing. You're raising money, you're building product, etc. What's the next step? And you have to keep your eye on the ball and know that, Monday you're going to be here, it's with this VC firm, here's the people you're going to be meeting with, this is the way they run their business. All of that is keeping your eye on the ball. At the same time, you're trying to look at the end state and know where you're going, and every time you go through one of these steps, revisit the whole process. And I'm have to move through here. Learn to negotiate. I took a number of negotiation classes because I'm not very good at it. It's an art and a science. It's something you need to practice often. One of the classes I took, they started off with a little exercise. I gave everyone in the room a list of things for the garage sale. And your job was to sit down with somebody else and sell them the things from the garage sale. And when I was done, I was very proud because I got rid of everything and I earned $300. The women in the class were coming back with thousands of dollars. It was amazing. And the thing I learned was that if I'm in negotiation with a client or I'm in negotiating with a supplier, I need people with me that have different skills than I have for myself, because it's not something I'm very good at, right? And you have the right kind of people, and negotiation becomes a very interesting process, which can be hung up on a single word in a contract, or it can be hung up in a decimal point on a pricing sheet, etc. And you want to get through it, and you need to have skills that balance your own. Good guy, bad guy. We practiced as we're going into negotiation that some people are going to play the good guy role and some people are going to play the bad guy role. The bad guy role was walk away from the opportunity if necessary. The good guy role was, I'm here to get your deal done. Create models when necessary. If somebody says, hey, at this volume I'll buy 10,000 at $3 a piece. At this volume it'll be $3.10 a piece. Then have a model that you can quickly ascertain whether or not that has an impact on your business. Know your customer, your boss, your investor, the immediate customer, etc. And so every situation you walk into, you're going to have a different customer base that you're talking to. It may be a VC that's your direct customer. It may be the customer that wants to buy your product. You may be selling, in the case of Western Digital, we sold disk drives to Dell and IBM and everybody else, but the end customer of the computer was another customer that we had to keep straight. So it's part of the process when somebody says, who's your customer? It depends on the time of day who that customer really is. Okay, well, this may be the most important. Of course, all of these are important depending on where you are and what you're doing. Don't screw up. This is the advice from one of my mentors. Just don't screw up. And when you do, take responsibility. I have screwed up in my career. I remember just about every one of them. And I occasionally have to think back on them. Do not engage in destructive behaviors. I can tell you right now, a number of people I've met over the years that had a problem. It was a drug problem, a gambling problem, or whatever problem. And I can tell you right now, you can't hide it forever. It will catch up with you and you are doomed. So I just say, don't do it. Easy. The internet is a minefield that never forgets. If you're silly enough to chew out a poor woman at Chick-fil-A about the way the company's being run and then record it on the internet and post it, you will get fired. If you work for a government agency and you're flipping off the President of the United States, you will get fired. Right? The First Amendment does not protect you from being fired. And it can hurt your career for a really long time. Know the limits of your authority, don't promise what you can't deliver, and don't put your investors in a predicament. Your investors are seeing the customers through you. You have to protect your investors at all times. Oh, intellectual property. Know what your IP is, develop an elevator pitch. It's got to be short and sweet. You've got to know what your value proposition really is. For those people who watch Shark Tank, I mean, it's the key to getting through the meeting with. If you don't know what your elevator pitch is for your intellectual property, you're doing. Tailor the elevator pitch to the audience. VCs take a different approach than your customers. Document your IP, patent when appropriate. Know a good patent attorney. They're going to be your best friend to get through this. And understand the term encumbered intellectual property. Okay? If you're developing software, you may be taking software applications and merging them together. Each one of those other applications carry a burden. They either limit your market or they add royalties and charges, and it becomes an encumbered environment that the client or the BC needs to understand, and they don't want to deal with it if it's not necessary. Okay? So every time that you have something embedded in your own idea that's owned by somebody else, you need to understand what that ramification is. So you could use somebody's development software at no charge, but if you start to include it in the product that you're selling, there could be a huge financial impact and also limitations in the market that they place upon it. Learn to multitask. Okay, so multitasking is not sitting on the john, on a conference call with your boss, playing with your phone, texting your buddy, etc., etc. That's just showing off. That is not multitasking. Multitasking is knowing how to keep everything in its own compartment. Your family, the business you're in, the customers you're calling on, where you are in the product life cycle, where you are in this process. You have to keep it all straight. And over the years, I developed mental tricks to be able to help me do that. So I had compartments. Okay? Monday morning, I had to get on a plane. I had to know where I was going. I had to know who the customer was. I needed to know who I was meeting with, what the message was, etc. On the last day of the month, I had to do my expenses. There are certain things at certain times that become something that you can manage. Avoid chasing shiny objects. That customer that wants to talk to you, that may be the best thing there ever was, but it's outside your skill set. Look for anomalies in the process. What I meant by that is if you look across all the things that you're trying to manage and there's something that's sending up a red flag, and it's probably a red flag. You better get in there and understand it. And follow a formula. Create your own formula about how you multitask. Communicate crisply. Oh man, this is important. Standalone emails. So at Teradata and Western Digital, companies like this, I get 60 to 100 emails a day. Which ones do I read? And I tend to read the ones that came from people that the email was a standalone email. I can see right on the title what the subject was, and it was very crisp. One or two paragraphs got the point across. I understood it. I could deal with it. People that went on and on and on in their email, you just didn't have time to read. Be responsive. You send me an email, you're going to get a response. Right? It's just the way it is. Practice making the complex simple to understand. I was working with a brilliant PhD, a physicist, who had a knack of taking the most complex subjects and topics and making it simple to understand. You know, we drag him everywhere because he could take convoluted artificial intelligence, algorithm, yada yada jargon, and we could talk to the CEO, who probably had no idea what we're talking about, but very quickly understood what it would do for his company. So being able to do that and practice it is an extremely important skill. Keep to the 3-minute rule. What you want to do when you want to talk to somebody about an issue is try to make the conversation crisp, make it very straightforward. I had a boss that had a big old hourglass thing up. It's 3 minutes. And flip it over and say, okay, tell me what it is. And if you don't finish by the time the last grain of sand is out, you're out of my office. Okay? So I had to come in and tell him what the problem was, what the potential solutions were, and I asked him for which one he wanted to select, and then I go off and do it. Okay? We developed a great relationship. He was probably one of the most important mentors I had. You know, I have like 5 mentors that are really fundamental in my career. He was one. Communicate often, but not aimlessly. Don't depend on texts and emails to communicate important information. Just because you sent your boss an email about an issue, you may not have read it. Right? The company's going down the drain and you're sending out emails thinking that's the end of your responsibility. You are wrong. And know the value of your idea, and it's never what you think. Anybody here's the founder about McDonald's? What was his business? Real estate. It wasn't burgers, it was real estate. Good judgment. So, at one point in my career when I was promoted to Director of Quality, I went into my boss's office and he goes, okay, you're Director of Quality. Here's a one-way ticket to Japan. I want you to go to explain to the Japanese Navy why they're going to lose steerage from the bridge to the rudder on all of their ships because we have a problem with a comm chip that was in between. And I said, well, gee, John, thanks for the vote of confidence. He goes, no, you use good judgment. We trust you. Just go take care of the problem. And on the way out, he said, and nobody else would go. But judgment is you think about it, is people look at you and they go, okay, this person has got good judgment. I trust them. I can put them in any environment. I can send them anywhere in the world. I can put them in front of anybody. And we know that good things are going to happen. Or this person just doesn't get it, right? So practice. Surround yourself with smart people. Continuously think outside the box, but know how to draw inside the lines. What I meant by that is you may be thinking you have the best idea, your company doesn't have a clue how to run their business, you want to do something different, but you better be able to draw inside the lines because companies, I'll tell you, think about this. Boeing, the Dreamliner, right? Flies at 38,000 feet at 500 something miles an hour, flies continuously, and I can tell you, after spending a couple of years inside of Boeing, they're the most brilliant people in the world. They are incredible, right? There's more PhDs than you could possibly count, right? But on the other side of it, they have to adhere to very, very regimented ways of doing things in order to make sure that aircraft is going to stay in the air. So they can't go off and do things without really thinking it through and all of the potential ramifications. That's why I said draw inside the box. Learn to delegate, develop a thick skin. Can't tell you how many customers on that list told me no, no, maybe, okay, I guess we'll do it. If you can't stand rejection, if you can't stand criticism, then maybe you want to find a different line of work than trying to run your own business, because you are going to get rejections and you're going to get criticized. It can't just be about the money. If money is driving your decision making, and that's the only thing driving your decision making, you will make mistakes. It's got to be about the business, it's got to be about the product, it's got to be about the customer. And very importantly, be in front of the right people at the right time with the right message. If I go into a company and start talking to them about a solution that the people in the room really don't care about, I'm in the wrong place with the wrong people. Okay? So, here's my, my advice. Let's see, how much did you pay to get in here? Free? Build a solid foundation, know your numbers, I'll go through this, and I will guarantee success or I'll refund the ticket to this event. Or when you're building out your retirement path, I won't be here anyway, so. So, I'll turn it over to questions. Got a few minutes. Yes.
So you kind of explained that there's a formula to create a good business plan. You never really explained what that was. Can you go a little bit more into detail about that?
Yeah, so for technology, and I think it applies to other industries as well. Part of it is, you state up front, what's the problem? Okay, so if I'm a VC and I'm reading business plans, and the problem says something I'm not interested in, it's not in my wheelhouse, then I know I don't want to go any further. But if it's something that I'm interested about, like for instance, if you're building software that does home loans, the problem is that the current state of affairs is extremely cumbersome. You never know where you are. It's extremely expensive. There's too many players in the world. Et cetera, et cetera. So you start off with a problem statement. Then you start with the next thing is, what's your solution? Okay, I'm going to take and democratize the entire process, create a self-service environment on the internet. We'll have links to da-da-da-da. Then you talk about your technology, and you talk about this. There's a series of, it's a sequential thing that in one page you can get your point across, right? And it's something that takes practice and it takes a little bit of thinking. I know of a very successful VC firm on Sand Hill Road that they only invest in vertical solutions, period. It's got to be a vertical solution. It's got to be very self-contained. It's got to be very specific. And they reject out of hand anything that doesn't fit that model. Every VC's got a sweet spot that they work with. So knowing that and knowing how to sequence your discussion, they'll get you past the first step, right? They'll get you an invitation to come and talk. And we can go into more details.
So one of your slides said know your barriers, and one of the interesting, I find that this market of technology is really interesting. So what, in your experience in that market, what are some barriers to entry into that market that you've seen?
Well, first of all, so let's talk about technology for a moment.
All right.
Okay. So software technology is what it is. One of the barriers is understanding how the client does their business today and the ramifications of your idea and how it's going to change the way they run their business. And the reason I say that is sometimes you can come up with the best idea in the world, but if the standard operating procedure inside that company is this, and you're saying, my technology will change the way you run your business, that can be a barrier in itself, right? I worked with a company that did benefit denial. And, great technology. It was programmable adhesive locking devices that would go onto a DVD card or a SD drive or whatever. You run it through the cash register. When the cash register did its thing and recorded the transaction, there was a little RFID circuit there that would disconnect the adhesive. Very cool. Technology was proven. They did tests with a number of big companies, and they couldn't sell it because people at the stores didn't want to add another device to the cash register that was potentially slow things down, add cost, they'd have to train the people, yada, yada, yada. So the best idea that ever was fell on its keys. Okay. That's a big one. Another question? Oh, yes.
Out of those 12 advice that you listed, which one took you the longest?
So, which one of these took me the longest to understand? I would say know your numbers. And the reason I say that is the numbers are so diverse, right? There's general ledger, there's numbers that relate to absorption factors and purchase price variance and all sorts of things inside here. But then there's the numbers talking about capital utilization, things like that. When you merge those two together, then now you understand the business, right? And you have to be able to pull all these things. Net present value just keeps going. And I called on so many different accounts that it just got mind-boggling. I had to simplify my life in order to get through it. Right? And if you're forming your own company, right, and you're pulling all this together, having somebody on your team that really knows accounting is great, but knowing how the accounting relates to your business is even better.